believe Karmelo Anthony is innocent even after he admitted this to police?
I believe Carmelo has the right to be able to create the same legal defense that anybody is afforded under these state of Texas laws and Constitution. I believe if Carmelo wants to display his self-defense claim, he should be entitled in the court of law without interference. That's what I believe.
Does Karmelo Anthony's family believe he is innocent?
I believe Carmelo Anthony's family wants the process for him to correction. I believe that the Anthony family wants to respect this process and get him prepared for his self-defense claim.
All right, so Karmelo Anthony has been indicted by Collin County Grand Jury. So let's take a look at the indictment, because I do think there are some things that people are missing and or misunderstanding. And then I'll talk a little bit about the indigency packet that was apparently filed on Carmelo's behalf. Okay, so in the indictment, there are actually two different ways alleged that the state could prove their theory that Karmelo is guilty of an M charge. So the first one we have is kind of
Yes, Karmelo Anthony is trending on social media again. I told you I'm going to follow this case to the very end. What I see on social media within the space of 5 days is extremely concerning. The family is still coming out to beg for more money. And this has triggered a lot of people to question, like, where is the other money? They contributed this money for this guy, and from the information I'm getting, some are saying, oh, they bought a house, they did this, now coming to ask for more money, saying, oh, we need money for defense. It's something that a lot of people didn't expect again. A lot I was watching throughout at the beginning of this process, some were supporting this family. Now they have suddenly changed their mind when they came on social media demanding more money.
So Carmelo Anthony's family is back to begging for more money in order to quote unquote cover his legal fees. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, but in the beginning of this entire story, when it first broke into the mainstream media cycle, we found out that Carmelo's family put out a GoFundMe that was then taken down, and they had to put out a Give, Send, Go, where they raised upwards to $500,000, if not more, in order to cover legal expenses. That money was then used for allegedly personal reasons. We'll just keep it at that. Now, here we are with an update on June 25th, 2025, where the family is now looking to raise upwards to $1.396 million. Right there. $1,396,725 is what they're looking to raise in order to defend this guy. Now, I don't know how much this is going to help, because when it's all said and done, the evidence is going to speak for itself. And the sentence is going to be issued according to the evidence. Therefore, you can raise all the millions of dollars that you want. If you're guilty, you're guilty, and you're out of here.
Yes, Sarah posted this. This lady is doing a lot since this started. All the informations I put out on social media is from her page. Karmelo Anthony arraignment is scheduled for July 18, 2025. According to multiple sources, his trial date more than likely will not be set until 2026. Now that the indictment is in place, the case has been assigned to the 296th District Court under Judge John has the authority to overturn a magistrate decision to reduce Anthony bond from days to days. Judge Raw, a conservative Republican, handled the case of Aziz, a former. I don't want to go more into that. There is something more concerning this lady put out about this case. Without talking much, let me show you this video. If you love what I'm doing here, please subscribe and share the video. It will do you no harm if you do that.
All right, so Karmelo Anthony has been indicted by College County Grand Jury. So let's take a look at the indictment because I do think there are some things that are people are missing and or misunderstanding. And then I'll talk a little bit about the indigency packet that was apparently filed on Karmelo's behalf. Okay, so in the indictment, there are actually two different ways alleged that the state could prove their theory that Karmelo is guilty of an M charge. So the first one we have is kind of the most predictable one, that Karmelo intentionally and knowingly caused the Metcalf through use of a poking device. So I've talked about this before, but intentionally and knowingly, they're legally sort of complicated definitions, but intentionally is it was my intent to cause the death, or I knew or should have known based on my actions that the death would result. But that is not the only way you can prove this particular charge. There is a second paragraph here, and you could find either or to convict Karmelo. With intent to cause serious bodily injury, so you do have to have intent to cause an injury, to Austin Metcalf, an individual, commit an act clearly dangerous to human life through use of the poker. And that caused his death. So what does that mean, act clearly dangerous to human life? I think the easiest example I can think of is, let's say you have a pew-pew and you're in a disagreement with somebody and you utilize that, you point it at their knee and fire. But instead of just taking out their knee, you hit one of the major arteries in their leg, and that person passes away from loss. I don't think you can say the B word on here. Loss of the red stuff. Now you can say up and down all day that I didn't intend for him to pass away. I didn't know that was what was gonna happen. Okay, but is doing that an act that would be clearly dangerous to the person who you did it to's life? Did you have the intent to cause serious bodily injury when you did it? Guess what? You're now guilty of M. So, self-defense, you could still argue self-defense in either of those circumstances. And just to address that really quickly, a lot of people are like, well, the grand jury issued an indictment, which means there was not self-defense. I mean, grand juries can take into account, mitigating evidence of self-defense in theory when they're issuing an indictment. But just because a grand jury rejected any of that doesn't mean that a jury couldn't still find for that. So some of the people I see talking about this are acting as though, well, see, self-defense has been rejected. Well, it's been rejected by a grand jury. What the ultimate trier of fact in the trial will do remains an open question. Obviously, there's a lot of uphill battles to fight here, but it's not like resolved in the way that some people seem to think that it is. But I guess to the extent that anybody thought this indictment was not going to happen, which I always knew that indictment was going to happen, self-defense was at a minimum rejected by a grand jury. Secondly, I've seen reports that Karmelo filed an indigency packet, in other words, requesting a court-appointed attorney, which recall initially he had, I believe, Derek Walpole as his court-appointed attorney, and then his family hired one person, and eventually we've landed with Mike Howard as his representation. Now, I know Mike Howard. I've never talked to him about this case, but he's a very good defense attorney, and he's a good person. So to the extent there's a lot of criticism being lobbied, and I'll talk about that in a minute, about certain decisions being made sort of in the greater picture of what's going on with his family.
Yes, I want to appreciate this lady for summarizing, putting this out. Yeah, I've looked to actually see what was inside the indictment because I've read articles, people talking about this every day. At a certain point, I didn't want to go into conclusions without actually knowing what was inside. This lady actually did a good job. I'm struggling to know her name, so maybe put up the link so you can check her out. What I'm struggling to understand with a lot of people still standing up to say this was self defense, it's extremely concerning. not far from now, we are going to see the end result of this case. Yes. So all these race baiters can stop all this noise I see on social media. There are people claiming, oh, I've done this, I've seen, it is like they know everything. It's like they're the law. They already know the conclusions of the case. I don't always like to report clips that are like this. Reason being that you talk based on speculations. I want to appreciate people supporting me, sharing out my videos. I don't want to make it long. If you see clips after this, that is just for the YouTube algorithm.
Metcalf in the stadium stands during the April meet. Anthony was 17 at the time and has been charged as an adult. Fox 4's Amelia Jones has more tonight. Amelia.
Steve, the indictment is the natural next step in any criminal case, and it paves the way for the case to move closer to a potential trial. The Collin County District Attorney's Office released a rare video statement about the indictment.
When something like this happens at a school event, it shakes people to the core. But let's remember that the justice system works best when it moves with steadiness and principle. That's what we're committed to, and that's what this case deserves.
Anthony's defense attorney also put out a video statement reiterating Anthony's claims that he acted in self-defense.
We expect that when the full story is heard, the prosecution will not be able to rule out the reasonable doubt that Karmelo Anthony may have acted in self-defense.
All the elements of a crime.
Russell Wilson is a former Dallas County prosecutor who's not involved in this case.
People line up for my advice.
Why don't we choose more carefully who we're going to lionize?
Just many natural reasons why marriage, infertility, trying to have kids makes things difficult.
There's something wrong with this person, and actually found a way.
What did you make of Donald Trump's
100?
Has been overwhelming. The lies in their amplification.
This is not going to end.
Self-defense. There's no self-defense. The kids in here and resolve this issue is called conflict resolution.
Again, the evidence is still coming in.
This is definitely a self-defense case because it always is one.
Because she's fearful of what may happen.
And then the
Registration Act is
talking about this man, Killmonger.
My summary of the first 100 days is that
if film and TV productions continue to
first term, and you will be very.
Once again, the field was littered with Wintour does every year. This Karmelo Anthony case.
Live in the White House. Many people
like a little unhinged drunk.
And black people don't.
Listen, I've got to get something off my chest.